Hey guys, welcome to episode 36 of the 1023 Soul Shop Talk podcast. I'll apologize ahead of time. I'm dealing with a little bit of a head cold, so my voice sounds like I went back a couple years, back to puberty almost. Today we've got Mike Anagnostou. Did I say that right?
Man, 9 out of 10. It's pretty close.
Okay. Well, I won't. Maybe I'll try again later. Mike is a kind of a part of the foundation of diesel enthusiasm in Alaska. And he, I don't think you didn't start 907 diesel basically he runs 907 diesel, which is it's an organization purely dedicated to diesel enthusiasts across the state. And as far as I'm aware, it's pretty much the only one. I don't know, you've got 15,000 members at this point?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. I think we've scaled it back now. We're around 13,000, 13,500. I actually did not start 907 diesel. It started in 2012 by a guy named Jeremy May, and I think it's been almost 8 years with 907 since I joined, and I've just taken over as a caretaker, and it's in his absence.
Yeah, and I mean, 907 diesel had started before, I was part of the diesel scene, but it was pretty small back when we first met. Now, you probably wouldn't have been invited to have this conversation if you didn't drive a 7.3. So we'll just throw that out there. He's got a pretty sweet clapped out 7.3.
It's a pretty fancy bucket of bolts.
Yeah. So 907 diesel, do you want to run through what 907 diesel is exactly? I mean, I just said it's a club, or it's a group or organization. I just said a lot of things, but basically it's just a group, except you guys put on events every year. What does that look like?
Sure. So 907 actually started, believe it or not, it started off of Cummins Forum back in the day when forums ran the internet, and that's where the online automotive community was. And it was, different guys on Cummins Forum from Alaska interacting. And then it started with one guy traveling throughout the state and meeting these other diesel enthusiasts. And then, I mean, the goal ultimately was at that point just to grow an organized community, where it then evolved into, okay, we're going to meet up once a month and have dinner. And then the Facebook group started because Facebook came relevant for some of the younger listeners. This was also back in the days where MySpace was on its way out and Facebook was still fairly new. Yeah, and it grew. It became organized a little bit. I mean, I wouldn't call it organized now, but we had a guy that ended up joining our team because completely unaffiliated with 907 at the time. Andrew Gingrich started a dyno day at Underground Performance there in Anchorage. And it was, at that time, you had to have a minimum number of trucks, which we fell short of. And then some Fairbanks guys came down, and ultimately this team ended up growing from these original people that made this first event happen. And we did a few more years of dyno days, which then evolved into, okay, we're making a ton of power in this shop and it's a great party, but everyone that leaves here wants to go flex all the horsepower they just made, which the need kind of presents itself to provide an outlet for that. Whereas Prowl for Power was born where, in this case, we bring 1023s, your chassis dyno, out on site. We dyno trucks there, and then, we do massive burnouts until the tires fly off the rims, and then we do a ton of drag racing, truck shows, stuff like that, because everyone's in the parking lot of the dyno shop looking at all the nice shiny trucks anyways.
Yep.
So you roll all these into one event, which you've been to Alaska Raceway many times now. I mean, I don't think you can beat the venue.
No. Oh, it's so gorgeous.
I mean, you're drag racing into a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll throw up some pictures if you guys are watching on YouTube of what the scenery looks like at the track. It's absolutely got to be the most gorgeous racetrack on the planet.
I would put it right up against Bandemere. It's pretty close, man. It would be a coin toss, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing that there's a community like 13,000 people. It's not really a lot of people, except when you think about the fact that there's less people in our entire state than there is in like most, like even like medium-sized cities down in the the normal part of the country. I think that's pretty impressive. I think it's neat that there's that large of a community of people that are interested in diesel performance.
Well, we should probably clarify that too. I mean, most people have never been here, so to scale the actual size of the place we live, you and I are actually we're about a 6.5 hour drive apart from each other right now.
Yeah.
And most people see Alaska on the map down and to the left of California. We're actually not down there, just in case there was any mystery left.
I'm sure there's people that don't know Alaska is not the size of Hawaii and down by Hawaii.
Yeah, we're northwest of Canada and still connected to the main structure of land here. And we're bigger than Texas, if that matters.
Yeah.
It does.
And with current events going on, we're also about 50 miles away from Russia. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. It should make things interesting.
So Prowl for Power is the event that you guys put on every year at Alaska Raceway Park. Is there going to be Prowl for Power event this year, 2022?
There is. Yep. We have our dates booked at the track. We'll be there July 30th and 31st. It's a Saturday, Sunday event.
Sweet. Yeah, that was a lot of fun last year. Last year we had just actually gotten our dyno set up. We built a trailer for it, and we did not like this was the first time we ever used it outside of just testing it, and we kind of had a lot of issues. We didn't bring enough power, and we had no way of hooking up to shore power, and so we were having a hard time getting enough power for the eddy brake to provide the braking that we need. Along with just trying to learn how to use it properly. And yeah, we're a lot more prepared this year and have spent a lot more time on it. And I think we'll be able to make sure we have really good power set up. So it seems like everybody, like the most exciting thing is the dyno. Everybody wants to, like you said, everybody wants to flex. But the problem is, no one's ever validated. Nobody actually makes the power they think they're going to.
No, it's a heartbreaker, man. It really is.
Yeah, all the 6.4 guys with a tune that think they're making 100 horsepower are pretty disappointed.
It's a heartbreaker until it isn't, and then it's your single greatest achievement for a very short period of time.
Yeah. So somehow you convinced me to jump up and spray your truck to ghetto fog it a couple times. I was a little nervous that it wasn't actually going to work out too well for me.
I was nervous for you as well. I was very nervous about the whole thing, but that was, like we're talking about, that was several years of disappointment on the dyno and a few short seconds of great success.
Yeah. So we originally met, I want to say probably right around the time that I started H&H Performance, which was pre 1023. I had just started selling parts from my house. I had started writing tuning for 7.3s, and then I guess because there was not really anyone else who was that interested in building 7.3s up here. Was that how we connected? Is that how we met? Was because you were building your truck, or did we meet before that?
Yeah, we met through 907 Diesel because we were both answering all the 7.3 questions all the time when everyone was broke down.
Yeah.
And then you and I would say involuntarily, were invited in to run a separate group that was 7.3 specific at the time. Sorry.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had started H&H, and there was, I think there was some friendly rivalry happening there because we both drove dilapidated pieces of crap at the time.
Yeah, your truck is a piece of crap, but mine at the time was so much worse. It was so bad.
For a slope truck, even it was pretty rough.
Yeah. So you somehow you decided that it was going to be a good idea to dump an absolute insane amount of money into your truck. So walk us through what you did with it, and then we can talk about why you regret it. Oh, I'm sorry. Then you can tell me whether or not you regret it. Excuse me. Let me correct that.
I mean, to preface that, it's a terrible idea to dump a ton of money into a 7.3. As long as you go into it being honest with yourself and knowing that it's a terrible idea,
yeah,
then I think you can supply those parts with a pretty clear conscience.
Yeah. Yeah, that is what we preach on like every day. Like basically every episode is like fine, if you want to make power, that's fine. We can do that. Just know what you're getting into.
Yeah, you and I had a conversation the other day where we talked about this, and it's like you can invest all the money you want into the best parts possible and build something as strong as it can possibly be, and there are no guarantees in what we do.
Yep.
I think that is especially true in very specific engine designations. There are some that it does not matter what you do; they will blow up one day for no reason at all.
Yeah. Well, in 7.3s, it's just you, especially now, like they are just getting so expensive. And like the idea of putting, let's say, spending $12,000 to $20,000 on a 25-year-old truck, and then pouring, to make 500 horsepower, let's say somewhat reliably, you're still looking at, $7,000-$8,000 in parts at least. If you're not going to build an engine, if you include building an engine in that, and if you got an automatic transmission, you do transmission, like you're easily going to be into that thing, $35,000 to have a somewhat reliable experience. And I just can't. And it's never going to drive like a new truck. It's never going to ride the same or steer the same. It's never going to make power. It's never going to have the power band that a newer like VGT truck is going to have. Yeah, it starts to really, really not make sense to do it. So yeah, what did you do to your truck? What all do you have done to it?
So that is the best piece of advice, is that if you're looking into that 500 horsepower thresh mark reliably, you should be building an engine. I have not done that. And we've pushed the boundaries further than anyone should without building an engine. So my truck, it's an early 95 F350 with a 7.3 Powerstroke. It's an automatic E4D. That has a full force 250 200cc injectors. It's got a BorgWarner S369 SXE with a 1.0 housing on a iRate T4 kit with their intercooler pipes plumbed into a Banks intercooler, which it makes a ton of power. I would not spec that build for anybody asking for it. You're going to run into some drivability issues where you have to drive the truck very conservative, and towing is not a fun experience anymore. You are managing temperatures the entire time.
Yeah.
But Go ahead.
A lot of people are happy, like with let's say like a 250-100 and an S366. A lot of people say, "Oh man, it tows great. I love it." And the problem is, like, this goes back to like there just is no guarantees. There are so many things that can make the truck not run well, and everybody's experience is going to be different. But the likelihood of the experience like yours, where it's like, yeah, this thing is kind of a nightmare. Like, it's a lot of work to drive it, and makes, only makes 500 horsepower to have that driving experience. Like, that happens with a lot of people. Some people it doesn't, some people it does, but you open yourself up to that opportunity when you do a build like this. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're looking, and this is not to steer anybody off of 7.3s. I think if you know that that's what you want the classic styling, you want everything that this truck is, and you want to start from in my opinion, an early diesel performance platform.
Mm-hmm.
I think 7.3s are awesome. If you're a guy that wants something that rides nice, drives nice, makes 500 plus horsepower, is reliable, tows great, I don't think a 7.3 is a great truck for you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, the money you're going to put into that truck to get all of those things you just listed off. I mean, these are things that you can buy a newer Ford or an older Cummins or an older Duramax and get with a tune.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So,
All right. So you've
but
got.
I mean,
Did you do an S369? Is that what it was?
I did. Yep.
Okay. So you
That
got.
was when so you ordered that for me when the SXE line, I think, was fairly new at the time.
Yeah, I don't even remember when they came out. I know that like now, now what you have, I definitely would never recommend. Not only would I not recommend it, I wouldn't sell it to someone. Like it's like if you're wanting what you're looking for, like the build you did, then I would end up down the path of I would stay with 100% nozzle because it's a lot easier to control them, especially in a setup like this. And I would do an S366. You know, it's not. There's probably not a lot. It's not going to be a massive change from what your truck does, but certainly it would be a lot easier to make it more drivable. But
Absolutely.
being
And
what
to
it
be
is,
clear, yeah, to be clear, you didn't spec that build for me. I sent you a parts list and I said, this is what I want. You gave me a price total, and that was, you're like, that's a formidable setup. You're going to party. Okay.
yep. So what high pressure oil pump do you have in it?
So this truck has, it's got an adrenaline in it, which I think realistically you should be running dual H pops if you're running a setup like this, but this one single pump has kept up great, so hasn't given me any issues.
Yeah. What and do you have was 37s, 37 by 13s? Is that what you're running for tires?
It's on a 35 13.5.
Okay. Tires always look so much bigger on an OBS, especially than newer trucks. I don't know why. The truck just seems massive.
Yeah, it was on 37s at one point. We went back down to a 35, which it's also on 20 by 12, so that doesn't help the ride any.
Yeah. What's the gear ratio in the truck?
This truck has 410s in it.
Okay. What are some things about the build that you are planning to change in the future?
Well, we have a transmission in it that's actually lasting this time. I bought it off another guy on 907 that was built local to you there down there in Wasilla or in Palmer. The shifting on OBS trucks isn't great. You can only tune them so well. The parameters just are not there to make them great when they're this heavily modified.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably next on my list is to go to a standalone transmission controller for the E4OD to manually tune that transmission a little better for street driving.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that has a decent sized set of injectors and toes in a 7.3 probably is on and off the overdrive button like I am on hills,
Yeah.
which works, but it'd be great to not do that.
Yeah, that button is something I tell people to get very comfortable with when they do a big build.
But otherwise, there's not a ton else in it. I've added performance wise. I mean, so the transmission is it's a triple disc billet DPC converter. It's been completely gone through. It's got, I think it just has a billet input. I think it's got stock, intermediate, and outputs. And then I put a Mag High Tech deep pan on it just because I was there and the old one looked crusty. Otherwise, it's got Comp 910 valve springs, Smith Bros push rods, and then everything else I've added to it is more just serviceability items and maintenance stuff to make fluids last longer, make service easier. So it's got a diesel site coolant bypass system on it. It's got a Franz oil bypass system on it. So a lot of filters everywhere. And then it's got a 444 fab dual Bosch pump fuel system.
Duals like stock Super Duty Bosch pumps.
Correct. Yep.
Nice.
And that's got, so I kind of threw Jeffrey's head for a loop when I spec'd this one because it's his standard fuel pump setup, but I did two tank swaps on this truck. So it has an F26E rear fuel tank that's a 38 gallon upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a sump, which feeds into a 38-gallon Super Duty midship tank, which is the primary fuel tank. So there's an inline fuel pump between those that's separate that feeds the front tank. And then the front tank is sumped. It has a 5/8 supply that goes to the fuel pumps, and then it's 3/8 all the way up to the engine where it's got a regulated return and a fuel ebb.
How is that controlled
Uh,
between the rear tank and the front tank? Do you just like turn the pump on whenever the front tank starts to get empty?
yeah, it's just it's on a switch in the cab right now.
What did you end up doing for monitoring the fuel levels?
So the F26E rear tank is identical in every way to the factory tank as far as the top and the bottom. The difference is it is like 6 or 7 inches deeper through the midsection.
Mm,
So you actually use the factory skid plate. You just need longer hardware to mount that.
got it.
But as far as monitoring fuel level in that tank, you can use the factory sending unit from it. This is gonna, okay. I'd like to clarify something. Like this truck sounds decently impressive, but like fear not, I've done some pretty hacky stuff. So you have to make a new float arm for that sending unit. And the way everybody does it on the old school forums is they take a welding rod and they smack all the flux off the outside of it and they bend a welding rod because it is the perfect length once you're done.
All right.
So that's what I did and it worked and it's accurate. And then the midship tank out of a Super Duty, so this was a 2001 or a 2002 7.3 that had a 38-gallon poly tank. It actually, if you use the Super Duty straps, it bolts right in place. And the sending unit is the same connector as the OBS. You just have to unpin the connector and switch the wires, and then it plugs right in like factory. You use the Super Duty sending unit and everything. It's great.
Hmm. Yeah,
The
I
only,
I
the,
think that everyone who's doing anything to 7.3s, or most everyone, is probably done some hacky stuff that nobody's really talking about. So
yeah, I mean, like, to be clear, like having two 38-gallon tanks is great until you go to fuel them up, especially right now because the fuel prices are terrible. But that tank also rides dangerously close to the rear drive shaft. Like you can get your hand in between there, but that's about it.
hmm. If you had to do the build over again, what would you change about it?
Everything. I would change everything.
Would you consider
I
doing a similar build, just a little bit smaller, kind of like I said earlier, like a 100% nozzle and like a 366, or would you just go just straight up everything smaller?
I would go considerably smaller, honestly. You know, early on when you and I had first started interacting, um, I had a set of, I want to say those were 150 zeros in the truck
Mm-hmm.
and just some small turbo mods. I mean, it had a Banks quick spool housing and a billet compressor wheel from Diesel Slate. And that was more or less it. The truck was stock. I mean, it had a can tune TS chip and it made, well, it had zero fuel pressure, but it made 304, 619 on the dyno. That was a great truck. Like a little bit more than that, and we're like right in the happy spot. Like if I was going to do this truck over, I would keep the adrenaline H pop. I would keep the valve springs and the push rods just for the added security of it. And I would probably throw like a set of 180/30s in this truck, and I wouldn't even go T4. I would do a drop in KC turbo.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how fast drivability goes out the window. Um, once you break past like that barrier that you just mentioned, it's kind of all bets are off. But the nice thing is, if you stay with a stage one, or so like anything from like a 160 to a 180/30, like you're not really making any sacrifices. It's basically all benefits, especially with the 160 since, or the baby swamps like you had. It's like they run exactly like stock if you don't have tuning. So you could literally be anything from just like stock all the way to, mid 300s if you have the supporting modifications. It's pretty hard to beat that. And being that, I don't know, we talk about this all the time. So I'm repeating myself again, but the nice thing is, if you stay with smaller injectors, you can also run a smaller turbo, which means it's going to be a lot more responsive. And losing that responsiveness in order to make more power at a higher RPM, like, yeah, that 500 whatever horsepower is pretty fun when you're using it, but like, how often do you really use it? Like, how often do you go wide open throttle in your truck in a race tune?
I mean, all the time, but
Okay.
I mean,
because that's the only way to drive it, or
yeah. I mean, so you've driven 7.3s with big turbos. You've even driven my truck. It's awful. I mean, like a 369 in this truck, you're not starting to get any responsiveness. Like, it's not even making noise until like 1900 RPMs. I mean, and it was even worse with a low stall converter in it because the truck was just grumpy.
yeah,
I mean, that's the misconception is bigger turbos, more power. Like, this is the cool thing. There's something to be said for smaller turbochargers that just work, that are well spec'd for the fuel you're putting into the truck. And yeah, I would definitely go back. If a guy came to me right now with an OBS truck that was bone stock and he's just like, I just want to make a little more power and have something really fun to drive. Well, I think fun to drive is subjective because, yeah, this truck is fun to drive, but it's not fun to drive when there's a trailer behind you. It's not fun to drive at the legal speed limit.
yeah,
It's not fun to drive in traffic. Um, if a guy took an OBS and threw a pump in it, did a fuel system, did a drop-in balanced turbo and a set of 160s or 180s, I think that kid's going to have a lot of fun with 400 horsepower. I say kid, I mean, we're all kids when we hop into them, but
yeah,
I think that's the sweet spot on a 7.3 is that 370 to 400 horsepower mark is a great place to play. It's still well mannered on the street.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot easier to control for sure.
Oh yeah.
How about you don't drive your 7.3 that often, right? Or do you drive it pretty frequently?
So I'm not driving it right now. I told myself after I got it back together this spring when I put the transmission in it that I didn't want to drive it this winter. You guys have had some pretty cold weather down there, but it's pretty consistently brutal here in Fairbanks all winter. It's been
Mm-hmm.
-20, -30, -40. It's just the truck will do it. It'll start at all those temperatures just fine. It's just hard on it, and so I've been giving it a break, and that's what I'm trying to explain is like you can dump a bunch of money into a truck like this and it's cool, but it's way cooler driving something that gets you everywhere you want to go.
Yeah, smoothly, and like you can hear the radio. And so
Yeah.
what's your other driver? What's your other truck?
So the truck I've been driving all winter is my wife's truck. She has a 2004 and a half LOY Duramax crew cab long bed.
And you like the driving experience of that truck more than your 7.3?
I think if I was going to recommend, like if somebody was looking for a 7.3 and I could steer them towards a Duramax, I would probably steer them towards an LOY. One, because you don't get the injector issues of an LB7, but you also don't pay LBZ prices.
Yeah.
I think LOY is the sweet spot where people sell them cheap because they think they have some issues, which they do, but these are pretty easy things to address. I would say easier than like steering a guy towards a 6.0 or a 6.4.
Mm-hmm. Do you tow often with that truck?
All summer long. I've got a big 40-foot camper that we tow around. We like to take advantage of it as much as possible.
Yeah. Do you like towing with it?
I love towing with the Duramax. I do not love towing with my 7.3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, it's a night and day difference, and that is the difference. Is that Duramax is stock. It has an exhaust kit on it, and that is it. It's not even tuned.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference in towing, in being able to pull hills and not, I don't even have to look at a gauge in this truck. That's the best part. I don't even have gauges in it. It has a CTS2 monitor just to read codes should they arise.
Yeah. Yeah, Robert keeps telling me the only, like, I've owned several Cummins, I've owned lots of Powerstrokes, I've one of all of them, or more than one of each of them. And the one thing I've never owned is a Duramax. But every time I drive one, I'm like, man, these things just drive so good. Which is, at this point, is all I care about. Like, I don't. We were talking the other day. I was like, I haven't even owned a truck. Like a daily driver, we have our our race truck, but I haven't owned a truck in like almost a year and a half, 2 years now, because I don't have a purpose for one. But certainly, all I care about at this point is like I'm incredibly busy. Is something I can just like get in and drive. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant. It just needs to start and run because I don't have time for things to be broken. And if we're fixing stuff, it's because it's in the shop or it'll be for some other purpose. So maybe I should consider getting an LY. I certainly am not going to pay the LBZ tax. That's for sure. So.
Oh man. Yeah. When you're looking at trucks that are, I mean, you're talking they're what, 15 years old now and they're still $28,000. It's a bit much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even 7.3s are that now. I mean, it's especially like Excursions. We're seeing Excursions in the $40,000 to $50,000 range for a low mileage truck. It's like that's just insanity. I've got a guy up
funny
here.
You bring up.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's funny you bring up the rarity of Excursions when like for years we all watched that guy in Wasilla, Logan, like had like two of them that he was just hacking them up and putting ZF6 in them.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Before that, I don't know of anybody that had done a ZF swap in one. And I can't believe he took that thing to Italy. I can't imagine driving a lifted manual Excursion around the narrow streets of Italy.
Yeah, like all the cars are small, so the streets are small, and then you have this
there's
giant, like it's like overwhelmingly American truck.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Excursions are they're pretty neat. I would totally drive one if they weren't just ridiculously expensive. And my wife doesn't like driving big rigs. She likes to drive something pretty small.
Well, I think right around the time I built my truck through you guys were working on another lifted 7.3, the big blue one. You remember the one I'm talking about? Because I think he ultimately took that truck to Japan or something.
Why am I not remembering? I don't remember.
Yeah. I've got some pictures of it. We'll throw them up.
Yeah. What were we doing to it?
I think that truck, it was spec similar to mine. I think it went with either 238s or 250-100s. It had a 366 and a T4 kit. It had the big globe and anchor on the side door.
I honestly don't have a clue. We've been part of too many builds now. I don't remember anything from like more than a year ago, hardly.
Well, that's the luxury of working on cool trucks all the time, I guess. You just start to forget some of them.
Yeah.
Is it everything you hoped it would be?
Yeah, going from being an enthusiast to like working in the industry and then creating in the industry, my perspective is so much different now than what it was. And it's funny now, knowing what I know, and then talking to people who are in the position that I was in before, when I was just an enthusiast, knowing that like they don't understand what we've seen, and then trying to figure out how to like bring education in to where like anybody who wants to understand how these things really work, like everything from like choosing parts and trying to make trucks work the way that they need to for the right people, like maintaining them, the cost of it all. Yeah, it's very different. I don't even know that I would be prepared to like give an explanation of the differences, but I think you're in a unique position of where you're not like a professional in the industry. Like that's not what you do for work. But you're very involved to the point you're like more than just a normal enthusiast. And so you can kind of see both sides. But being just a consumer in the diesel market, whether it's aftermarket or just stock, just anything to do with diesels, there's a lot that is kind of missed. Like there's a lot that people don't understand, and it can be really hard as a shop trying to make like help people make good choices for their trucks. Anything from maintenance to upgrades, like it's Yeah, it's very different. It is not what I expected. That is for sure.
Well, absolutely. And then like you add in the challenge that you have to take these people's dreams of making X number with this truck if they're modifying it, and you have to scale that to a point where it can survive here in Alaska, which is it's one thing to build 1,000 horsepower truck. That's challenging. Not as challenging as it used to be, but it's challenging. But to build that truck to survive daily driving here is a very different thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't actually have, and this is me speaking personally, this isn't just as like 1023. Robert has different interests than I do, and he actually runs the shop. I don't really have any interest as a shop in doing that kind of work for people. Me personally, I just don't care about trying to build like high horsepower street trucks. One, we'll talk more about it, in the future, but in dealing with environmental law at this point, like there's a lot of things that we can't do, and just sort of seeing the writing on the wall for what's to come, in our own experience in, dealing with the EPA. It kind of takes the wind out of my sails for having a whole lot of care for wanting to build things that are like high horsepower street trucks. Any amount of enthusiasm that I had for making crazy power has kind of been squashed at this point. Outside of just not being reasonable for most people. The same kind of experience is going from an enthusiast to someone working in the industry and in a lot of ways like leading things in this industry. It is not what you expect it to be when you get there, and it's the same thing with building trucks. Just like you and your 7.3, like yeah, it's going to be so much fun. I'll put the money into it and I'll build this awesome 7.3, and it's like, yeah, it's an awesome 7.3, except I kind of hate it and I wish I didn't do that. So yeah, it is. It's definitely different.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, and to clarify, I mean, anyone that argues that 1,000 horsepower street truck is reasonable is lying to themselves.
Yeah, they're reading what reasonable means from a different dictionary. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the EPA is concerned, I think you and I are certainly on the same page with that. But I think luckily it's grown to the industry now where we're in the situation we're in, but we all just want to know the boundaries of where we're supposed to live in these rules.
Yeah.
I mean, emissions and tax performance has come a long way. I wish a lot of that stuff had happened sooner. I know all the delete guys are scoffing as they're listening to this, but there's some great things that happened in diesel performance because of emissions. If it was not due to emission standards, you wouldn't have great things like variable geometry turbos and stuff like that, which are awesome for building power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean the fact that new trucks are rolling off the lot with, we're getting really dangerously close to 500 horsepower, capable, brand new, perfectly legal trucks is kind of insane. Like that's a big change in 15 years, to where there's not a lot of need, unless you just simply want to play with it, which I will always be an advocate for enthusiasts, but nobody needs more power than what a new stock Powerstroke makes for working it. Like nobody needs that. So it's just a matter of wanting to play with it at that point.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think, and you and I have both driven some pretty powerful trucks. I think realistically the limit, and we can argue about it, but I don't think you can legally utilize more than, say, 700 horsepower legally on the street.
Yeah, I don't know how you would. Like, yeah. Yeah, and it's sad too that there's so many racetracks and stuff that are getting shut down, or people like they're not, there's not enough interest, I guess, enough funding to keep them open. And maybe a lot of that is just from the ones I've seen. I've probably seen over a dozen tracks that I know of that have closed in the last year. It's a lot of work to maintain a track. properly, and it costs a lot of money. And I think probably a lot of it is, it seems like most people that are running tracks are older folks that are getting too old to have the will to maintain them. And I think they're, at some point, the newer generation of automotive enthusiasts is going to have to start putting a little more effort into keeping things going, when you're getting fought on so many sides. Like I said, whether it be people retiring, getting old, and not wanting to maintain them anymore, and then between that and then environmental regulations that are putting a hamper on what we can do legally. The industry needs to change, and there's a big shift that needs to happen for this to continue.
Yeah, I think it's all a timeline of events happening, and what we're experiencing right now in the diesel industry. I would equate, it's probably pretty similar to what the muscle car era went through years and years ago, where now it's our turn.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I foresee in that is if you're clued into diesel news at all, I mean, it's the emissions compliance shutting down diesel race vehicles. I have a big problem with that. Like, just make them unregisterable. That's one thing, but
Mm-hmm.
to outlaw it altogether is I don't know. I think it's going to do more harm than good. But as far as racing, and we're talking about, I say this term a lot, but we're talking about the next generation of diesel owner, and it's because you and I we're talking about forums, and like the other day we were talking about 7.3 10K mods and stuff. Like these are things that don't land on the modern generation diesel owner now.
Yeah.
They weren't there.
Yep. Thankfully, somewhat.
Oh, there was some hokey stuff that happened back in the day, but it got us here.
Yeah, I would love. I would really like to talk to. I'd like to get Bill from Power Hunger Performance on here at some point, to talk about the history of diesel tuning, because he was at the very, very beginning. My understanding was that he actually started at Super Chips before anyone was tuning these trucks back in 2000, and when they were basically he was paid to figure out how to tune them, and to build the software for it, where they were literally just learning by changing hex values and seeing what happened. I think it would be really neat to kind of go back to the very beginning and chat with him about that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was like back in the day where kids on Saturday woke up and watched trucks on Spike TV, and you had the Super Chips infomercials in the middle of them, and the Banks Power ads.
Mm-hmm.
This was back as far as 7.3 days. These were the days of Super Chips, and Hypermax was really big.
Yep. It was a lot of fun, and that's where maybe things aren't the way that I see them even now, because I'm kind of in my own little world, and maybe a lot of that people are still. I mean, people watch Diesel Brothers, which is just something I've never had an interest in. So my interest doesn't have to have a lot to do with what's happening in the industry. But yeah, I mean, things have certainly changed quite a lot. I am glad that 10K mods are not, they're a thing of the past at this point. I'm glad for that.
I think the world is glad for that.
Yeah. The amount of people that we deal with that have just completely messed up wiring, and we're like, man, you just sell the truck. Somebody tried a 10K mod and then just went full bore, putting resistors everywhere in your harness. That's a problem. It's not how this works. I guess one of the things I should do, I should make a now that it's never going to encourage someone to do it, or hopefully it won't. I should make a video explaining why the 10K mod worked. That would be I'll have to do that sometime.
Oh, that'd be a great one. You could get Vaughn in there to analyze everything for you. It'd be awesome.
Maybe not Vaughn, because then no one would understand what he's talking about.
He's very intelligent.
Oh my gosh, very intelligent.
He's sharp.
Yeah.
No, I think we've moved into a modern age of technology now, where everything is on the internet, everything is social media. Whereas, I felt really lucky to have come into the diesel industry in the height of Diesel Power magazine
Hmm.
and stuff like that, which I mean was such a huge impact. Like all I ever wanted when I was younger, when I got my first diesel truck, was like, yeah, one day it'd be cool to be in Diesel Power magazine. And although I never made it in there personally, they did come up and at least do a story about us. KJ Jones did, and that was probably one of the high points of my time with 907.
Yeah, I remember that. That was what, 2018, probably.
I believe it was, I think it was 2017 or 2018. I'd have to
Yeah.
find the magazine. As soon as like it became public and like they printed the magazine, I went to the grocery store here and I bought like 40 of them.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Like nobody is ever gonna care, but I will. I'm gonna have all of them.
Yeah, it's like the people that collect old newspapers. It'll be a relic. Someday it'll matter. Show your
Yeah,
grandkids.
maybe.
Right on, man. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I know we don't get a whole lot of time to chat, but I guess to recap, if you're in Alaska and you're interested in diesel performance or just the diesel industry at all, you can, if you're on Facebook, you can join the 907 Diesel Facebook page. Is okay. I'm a little confused actually on that. You guys have a official the page that's the community, and then there's another one that's for like events or something. What is?
So
Am I wrong about that?
we have a page and a group. So the page is just where we post stuff. It's, we'll post ads, we'll post videos and cool pictures and stuff like that. But the group is where everybody communes, and that's where you'll get stuff from, hey, I need diagnostic help with this, to, hey, what's the best shop for suspension work or performance parts, or, it's just a bunch of enthusiasts all together, working towards one goal, which is just keeping as many diesel trucks on the road in Alaska as possible.
Yeah. And do you guys still sell swag like stickers and stuff too?
We do, yep. Yep.
Okay.
We have a website up at you can actually click it right from the business page, but if you're searching in a browser, it's just 907dieselmerch.com.
Sweet. And so yeah, if you're in Alaska, I would encourage you to get on there if you see the value in a group like that. The things that make it possible to put on events like the Prowl for Power event that we have every year, or that they put on every year. Buy some stickers. That it all the funding only goes towards that. You don't make a lot of money off of this, do you?
I don't make any money off of it.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work,
That's
and
the
it's cool that you're doing it.
that's it's so much work, but it's the right kind of work, and I think you could probably relate to that now. Doing what you do with 1023 is where you get to pursue your dreams every day, basically.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, it gets expensive. There's a lot of things we do that have absolutely no benefit financially to us and cost quite a lot of money and that take a lot of time, but I enjoy them.
Like this podcast.
Like this podcast.
It makes no money, but man, is it great.
Yeah, I'm excited for like someday when I'm not a complete idiot that I can have conversations with people that are like hopefully better, like more useful. Like I'm not very good at interviewing, so I think it's a lot of fun. There's so many cool conversations that can be had. It's just a matter of actually sitting down and doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on film they would call this breaking the fourth wall, but I think the podcast, you're an established successful business now and you're nationally recognized, and I think what the podcast does from someone that takes it in, because I listen to it all the time, is I think it humanizes you. It's something I didn't realize until I started, working on Prowl for Power and contacting big industry names and sponsors, is that I thought, looking up to those guys, that they were on a pedestal, and then I realized once they took the time to talk to me that they're pretty regular human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never expected big name diesel companies to actually give me the time of day, and I've been pretty pleasantly surprised by that over the past few years.
Yeah, that's how I feel about everything. I don't have a tendency to like idolize anyone for any reason. But certainly in the past, I was. I guess yeah, I see it from a different perspective now, where It's like, I'm sure there are people like, and even now, like I get people that do listen to the podcast and they're, they'll call like all the time and they're like, oh man, I get to talk to you. It's like, no, you're missing it. I don't feel that way at all. Like, we're all just humans doing a job, and that's it. There's nothing special about any one of us. There's nothing special about you for running, 907 diesel, it's a big thing and it's awesome that you do it. There's nothing special about me running 1023. We're all just people. And I think it's cool that, if anything, that we can all, raise each other to another level of being great at what we do. And that's about all I can ask for.
Absolutely. Have you ever told anybody why you picked the name 1023?
I avoid that topic. I've been asked more times than I can count, and I have yet to figure out a good way to explain it. Basically, all it means is it's the analog digital counts for wide open throttle. That isn't what it's for. That isn't what the analog digital counts stand for. But in tuning, that is what we would call 1023. 1023 is the 80 counts. So yeah, still, all these years later, I don't have a perfect way of explaining it, but that's the most basic answer. It was because we couldn't figure out another name that made sense, so we just ran with it.
Well, it works. It seems to have done just fine for you.
Yeah, I pretend that it was on purpose because 1 goes before A, and so like the old school, like everybody calls their companies like, A1 or whatever, so it is at the top of the phone book. Well, nobody uses the phone book anymore, so that part doesn't matter. But occasionally we'll see a list of, distributors or something, and 1023 will always be at the top, and I'll pretend like that was on purpose.
Oh, it's so your order goes to the top of the list. I get it.
Yeah. There you go.
That's smart. That's really smart.
Oh, thank you. All right, man. I appreciate you taking the time to talk. I'll cut this off here. We're right at an hour, and I try to keep it around there. But July 30th and 31st is Prowl for Power, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, July 30th and 31st. It's at Alaska Raceway Park in Palmer, and should be the same as last year's. We'll have our dyno there. We'll have the show and shine, hopefully some racing, lots of good food. It's a really good time. So if you're in Alaska and you want to come out for that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dusty.
Yep.